Okay, you guys, we're back. I'm here again with Ned and Kelly Vandiver. They are relationship coaches if you guys haven't met already. They're also life healers and living examples of the work that we talk about in this program and in this group. Just really, they're walking the talk, and they're examples of radical transformation, not only in love, but also in life. And so I'm really looking forward to talking with them today about our topic of the week, which is love is not enough. And I actually, when I wrote this and I posted it in our group, I felt a little bit harsh writing it because it sounds just so negative. But the truth is, it really is the truth. Like, love cannot undo past conditioning. Love alone with like partner love, relationship love, in and of itself cannot undo past conditioning. And I think it's actually a really harmful myth that we have in this culture, that love will conquer all in that relationship sense. And we have seen in the work that we do, so many marriages end in painful divorce, even though the spouses love each other so much, right? I mean, they're in love, they want it to work, and that if that was all it took, there wouldn't be the problems that they're having, right? And people wouldn't get these horrific, painful divorces that they actually don't want. Right. So, and we see people fighting so hard to not break up, but ultimately love cannot win if there's deeper patterns, if there's entrenched coping skills that don't work, like maladaptive coping skills that we bring to relationships inevitably. And love will actually make the relationship last far longer than is actually pleasant, because there's the motivation. So that's the good thing, right? Love brings the motivation, but it allows you in some ways to shove things under the rug for a while. And we're going to get into that. And that can be damaging if you don't have the other things that it takes in addition to love. Yeah. So ultimately, successful marriages have to have more than love in common in order to last and go the distance. So today we're going to talk about why love isn't enough. We can get into the whole like larger myth, the cultural myth, but that's probably a whole other talk. But we really want to break down why it isn't enough, so that people can get really clear and not be seduced by this idea that love conquers all. And then we're going to talk about what it really takes. We've broken it down to 6 things that you have to have in addition to love. And then what you can do to get there, and what you can do to bolster yourself and build on the love, because the love is the platform. As you had pointed out earlier, Ned, that's really, the foundation. And we want to help you build on the love that you have, but make sure that you don't rely on love alone today. So there's some tools and mental shifts and strategy and mindset that falls under these categories. And we're going to get into that to make all the difference. But first, let's talk about, why is love not enough, you guys?
Right.
It'd be nice if it was.
Yeah, no, it's definitely not. And one of the biggest problems that we see in our practice is that because of love, people put off their healing. And so by the time they get to us, they're, maybe someone has one foot out the door, or they're just been fighting and arguing forever and ever over the same stuff, and they're just not in a good place. And it's because they haven't done the inner healing work. And so we allow love to actually become the barrier to the truth, which is that you got to heal. Like, your marriage healing is really secondary. It's the secondary benefit of you healing yourself.
Yeah.
It's you first. It's the inside out work first, and then the tool.
That's how you can stay in the loving feelings.
Yeah.
Yeah. But if you rely on the loving feelings alone, it becomes almost like a drug, and you're like almost like avoiding. You want to just get back to the love and bypass the work that needs to be done.
Right. It takes a skill set.
Yeah. And the other thing is, you're talking about relying on it to get you through situations that require something else a little bit different. Like you said, it's the foundation, and it's where you want to come from. When you start trying to effectively fix things, but you just can't rely solely on that to get you through some of these harder challenges that we have within the relationship.
Yeah, absolutely. And why, I've been thinking about this a lot as I was putting this together. Why is it, just real briefly, why do we think this? Why are we, really vulnerable to this idea, this myth that love will conquer all?
I honestly think it's socially if you just look outside of yourself and you look at a lot of people's relationships, but for the most part, we don't see what's going on behind the scenes. We look at the show that most people put on.
Yeah.
And it's even depicted in shows on television. Everybody's always trying to make it look like their relationships are so perfect, and they're not. So I think socially, we're cultivated to think
Pop culture, love songs.
yeah, this is the way your relationship should look. And if it doesn't, a lot of times some people will feel some shame to even have a discussion about it, or feel some shame about it being very different than what they think it should look like. So ultimately, what you find is we're either miseducated or we're not taught at all what a real relationship looks like.
Yeah.
And another thing that we see in terms of myths, right? Why everyone thinks that love is enough. And, another part is so many people think that their marriage issues will just magically somehow solve themselves over time. And that's a myth. Time is your enemy, because the longer you stay stuck in the negative patterns and negative stories, the longer, you're going to be fighting repetitively over the same things over and over again. And you're just putting your marriage at risk.
Yeah.
And time does not heal all of your wounds. That's a myth. Time conceals the wounds. People are pushing down their pain and they're carrying it around with them. Time becomes the enemy when you're not doing this work.
Right. If you're using time as just the thing to pass till you get back to the loving place again when you fall out of connection, and you're just waiting to get back to the love again, if you're just waiting and passing the time, that's going to be detrimental.
Yeah.
And time can work for you if you're actually doing the work, but that's the distinction.
Right.
And Ned, you had a really great analogy earlier about this, about how love can actually work against you. I mean, it's not just not enough, but it can actually work against you in terms of taking your focus off the thing that needs to be done.
Right. Yeah. I gave the example. If you have someone, for example, who loves running, and they live for running and the rush that it gives them, and all of a sudden, let's say they're hindered by an accident, and let's say their leg gets a huge laceration. Once they get back to a place where they're actually able to start running, even if they're, as they're injured, the experience of it changes. And the focus becomes more about, the wound that needs to be healed, rather than the experience and the enjoyment that they could normally focus on. And what that does is it distorts the experience.
Yeah.
And it's a real injury that needs to be healed. And much the same way, we have people who are relying on love in a sense that as a tool to heal themselves, but it doesn't work that way. They're coming from a place of woundedness and unhealed trauma, and they wonder why their outlook is so distorted in terms of the happiness that they want that they can't achieve. And then that's why I equated that to that. Until that person is fully able to heal themselves, they will never truly be able to come from a place of true love and understanding, and compassion, and just having that positive outlook in their life. That oftentimes they look at their partner and will begin to blame them for some of the things that are going on within themselves.
Yeah, we see it, and I've been there myself, so I get it, right? And I think we all probably have before we started doing this work, but it's this sense, and we see it a lot in clients, this deep inner unhappiness, anger, resentment, pain, dissatisfaction in life and in love. And it lives here, in the heart. People are walking around with broken hearts, and they are wondering why they feel this way. Well, it's because you're carrying around the childhood traumas. And the studies show that most every person has experienced some form of trauma or neglect of some form, and those are the things that you've got to heal if you want your marriage to work.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was thinking it with that analogy. It's almost like the body and the running, the act of running is the functioning of the relationship.
Yeah.
Love is the energy. And then the laceration are the unhealed wounds. And so you can't you can't enjoy the function. You're not going to be able to run the body. You're not going to be able to execute the relationship properly when your awareness is still focused on the unhealed wound all the time.
You're essentially not a fully functioning healthy adult.
Yeah.
You know, and that's the problem.
Yeah.
And like I said, we have a tendency, you know, where we're talking about relying on love in these situations. And like I said, it's the wrong tool for the job. It's the love is going to carry you through if it's true.
Yeah.
But it's not going to solve the problem. And that's what we're here to talk to people about. It's like, what do you have to do to fix this? You know?
Yes. Yes. And this is not to undermine love, because love is so, you got to have that, right?
Yeah. Yeah, definitely.
Not the only, but there's things you need to build on that. So let's talk about that. What does it really take? And we've identified 6 things for today, you guys. And I'm sure, you know, there's more things that we could cover, but we really wanted to boil this down into the most fundamental things that, you know, to keep it really streamlined and simple that you can focus on that will help you be able to stay in the loving place so much longer. The first one is emotional connection. And if you've listened to my webinar about the 5 shifts, emotional connection is really, that's not about communication. Communication comes later. First is emotional connection, which is just a sense of non-judgment, that like a culture of non-judgment between you and your spouse. Presence that can be communicated through touch or physical presence, and just knowing the other person is there and knowing that you're safe. That primal safety of knowing this is my person. I can turn toward them in distress. I can show my real feelings. I can be however I am, and this person is there for me. And that is just safety. And that's almost like something. It doesn't have to be communicated in words. It can be communicated through touch and affection, and through small actions of presence and being there, eye contact, things like that. You know, that sense of attunement to each other. That's what emotional connection is. And I think a lot of people put the cart before the horse, and they're focusing on communicating with each other, and then they don't feel heard, and then they don't feel connected. But you have to actually get the connection first before the communication.
You have to be in sync.
Yeah, right. And then the second thing is that you have to have shared rules of engagement. And what I mean by that is you have to have a shared understanding of what are the rules of our relationship. What are we not going to do? What do we agree is not okay to say or do, right? For example, like what are the tools that we're going to use that we agree we're going to use? Like, are we going to use a timeout? Are we going to agree that we're not going to blame each other? You know, we're going to try to not criticize each other and use an I statement instead of a you statement. That would be an example of a shared rule of engagement. You can have rules of engagement, but if they're not shared, then that can be tricky too, right?
Oh, yeah.
What would you guys say about that in terms of rules of engagement, and what comes up when you, because I see a lot of times with couples, there might be one spouse that has a really great idea of what they're going to do and not do and what the ground rules are, but the other person doesn't share that.
Yeah. That falls under, in the process that we take people through, that falls under sort of the vision, you know, for your marriage. When we're talking about values and we're talking about shared values, that's sort of where that just came to my mind. That's where that falls under, that part of that. Yeah, you have to be on the same page. You have to have a common vision, common values, common goals, so that you're both working towards something together and creating something beautiful together. And if you don't have those conversations about that stuff, you're opening yourself up to a lot of arguing and fighting over the same stuff over and over again. You know?
Convince each other of like, this is how we should do it. No, this is how we should do it. But I like what you said, Kelly, because if you come together with the vision piece of it and the values, and you're leading with that, then the execution follows. You can figure out where, like if you overlap, like you know, one person has these are their values, and this person this is their values, and there's an area of overlap.
Yeah.
You have to identify that first, and then you can build on that. And once you've aligned and you're like, okay, we both are in agreement that we want to raise our children this way, or we're both in agreement that we want to have a culture of respect between us. Now we can talk about what are we going to do to achieve that, and then talk about the rules of engagement. So I think you're right, they really do go hand in hand.
Yeah.
You don't have to be the same. You can have, like, I mean, I've seen successful couples with very different even faith backgrounds. Like one might be much more spiritual than the other, or they might have different opinions, different hobbies, different interests, different personalities. But if there's enough overlapping that you can build on, you can always find shared engagement.
And I love what you're saying about a safe place to be able to just communicate, say what you need to say without fear of backlash or attack or, any of that. Right. And then the rules of engagement. Yeah, they're so important.
Yep, exactly. And then you have to have the capacity to execute. That's number 3. So now you've got that, right? But how many times do we see people say, all right, so here's what we're going to do. We're going to take a time out when it gets to that point. Or from now on, I'm not going to blame. I'm going to say an I statement or whatever. And then when the time comes and somebody gets triggered, they don't execute. So there's a failure to execute that happens. And you have to have the capacity to execute what you've agreed upon. Because it's more than just the skill. It's more than just understanding here's what to do and here's how to do it. It's that you have a lot of times, and this gets back to the healing.
Yeah.
You have to remove the limiting beliefs that keep you stuck. You have to remove or replace the past conditioning. So speaking to the trauma thing, if you get triggered and you go 0 to 90 really quick when you hear something, and you haven't done that work of changing your belief system or your perceptual filters or doing the healing, then no matter what you decide you're going to do, you won't be able to execute it.
Right.
Yeah. I mean,
that's enhanced belief work.
Yeah, I have to say, when we're talking about this, when we're talking about execution, like many things, to do it well, it takes practice.
Yeah.
And I think that's what we talk to so many people who, try different things, and they get to a place, and then all of a sudden they fall back into a pattern. And what I realize is they stop doing the things they were doing to get themselves there to that place. Because, it's working now, right? So I don't have to do what I was doing anymore. And what I know this sounds cliche-ish, but what I've realized is this becomes a way of life. When to create a healthy relationship.
Yeah.
You have to create it from a place of intention.
Yes.
Every day. You know. And then it becomes this thing that becomes the default. I wake up, I do this, and you're constantly making yourself aware of your emotionality, and you're staying well attuned to, your emotions, your feelings throughout the day about your behavior and your connection with your spouse.
Yeah.
And that's why I said it takes a lot of practice.
Yeah.
Nothing less than overriding your default mode, which is like 10 million times more powerful, or whatever that number is. I don't remember, but it's really way, way more powerful than what you and your spouse have sat down to decide to do. That's not going to be, your conscious intentions aren't going to be as strong.
No.
Right.
Until you do the healing work, which involves a heavy dose of changing your limiting beliefs at the subconscious level.
Yeah.
Something that I think a lot of relationship approaches, they miss out on. They're focusing on the strategy and they're focusing even on the mindset, but not on clearing the stuff out that's getting in the way of doing it.
Yeah. And not only that, a lot of relationship work doesn't include healing the trauma. Like you have to do that. You have to. And these two scenarios are the most common. One is people are stuck on the same loop and the same story and the same patterns in their marriage forever. And then, or they're arguing and fighting over the same stuff over and over. When you find yourself stuck in these scenarios, you haven't done the inner healing work yet.
Exactly. When you notice that you have made that choice to do things differently, but you're still not able to execute and implement it consistently, you're not done yet.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean it doesn't work. It just means you're not done with the work yet. And
Right.
yeah, what you said, Ned, too, just about that it takes time. And
Yeah.
so many people expect, we've talked about this before, people expect so much for so little in relationship work. They really think that once they get it and go, aha, that's what I got to do, now I just have to go do it, and it's going to be that simple. But no one expects that when it comes to, transforming their body or transforming their career or transforming their parenting or any aspect of their life, whether it's, moving, your life or anything, any kind of growth. You have to know that it takes consistency and practice, and you're going to put a lot in before you see the results.
Exactly.
Yes. I mean, that's so true. Depending on the severity of your childhood trauma, right? Because it's on a spectrum. Depending on the severity, it could take a while to get yourself to a place where you genuinely feel really good inside. You love yourself, and you just feel good and happy.
Yeah. And you can't compare yourself to anybody else. Like you say, if you have a different history, somebody else is having easier time with certain aspects of it, it's easy to compare and go, well, they've made progress in that way. Why? It must not be working for me. This must not be right for me. But it's really just that you just might have more healing to do.
Exactly.
And point in comparing your path, they might have more healing in other areas,
Yeah.
And one of my favorite teachers, Jim Fortin, he always says, don't compare yourself to anyone because no two people have the same karma. We're all here to learn different lessons and go through different stuff. And, just don't compare yourself. It's really,
well, not only pointless, but it's just so wrong. Like when you're looking at it from that lens of we're all here with our own journey and our own path and our own lessons that we're supposed to be learning, they're literally, it doesn't even add up. Like it doesn't make sense to compare.
No.
Right? It just doesn't. So
relieve yourself of comparison game.
Yes.
It doesn't serve.
So we've talked about emotional connection, shared rules of engagement, which is tied into that shared vision and where do you overlap in your values. The capacity to execute, which involves clearing out those limiting beliefs. Then there's 3 more things. The next is, and we've touched on this, you have to have a willingness to grow inwardly. You have to have a willingness to focus on yourself and to use the conflicts and all the things your spouse is doing wrong, quote unquote wrong, to become more self-aware. You have to be willing to say, yes, that bugs me about them, but what does that mean about what I care about? And to flip it back into your own inward journey and to do that work, to be responsible for your own healing, because you're not going to heal through your spouse. You're going to heal with your spouse. You're going to heal together, and you can facilitate and you can catalyze each other's healing, but you cannot rely on your spouse to do your healing for you.
Yeah, that's powerful.
Yeah, right. But we see this is where when people don't have this willingness, that's where they slip into blame. That's where they slip into disempowerment. Yeah. If only they would change, if only they would do this, then everything would be fine.
That truly is the answer to many people's questions about why they have such a hard time getting through some of these harder challenges in their relationship. That is the biggest piece and the challenge for most people is to do this. Look at themselves effectively it's hard.
It is the hardest.
We know this. We know it's very difficult to, because when you come from the place of some childhood trauma that has created within you the inability for you to be truthful with yourself around this situation within you. It's not something that you want to look at and say, oh, I've been showing up this way. Or I could be so much better, because coming from that childhood place, it makes you judge yourself. And what we're trying to teach you to do is you need to take that opportunity to learn how to love that part of yourself, recognize it, and embrace it, and say, hey, I can be better and I can do this better.
From a place of love that's so important, because that's where people get stuck. It's like, I don't want to look at my part, because then I have to beat myself up about it. And that's not the point. It doesn't work that way. You have to look at that. You have to be willing to look at it. But I'm so glad you said that, because I think the non-judgment piece is so important in that.
Yeah.
Because if you know, that's what trips people up. It's not that they wouldn't be willing. It's just that they're so scared that they're going to take those internalized messages of that, all the things that are wrong with them, and then just transfer that onto themselves. And that's not what we're talking about.
No.
And it's so important. I can't stress this enough. It's so important. If you find yourself as an individual blaming everyone outside of you for anything, it could be anything. If you are blaming and you are being negative, that's a problem, because the longer you stay in those patterns, you're really putting yourself at risk of developing a serious personality issue.
It's true. Yeah.
I mean, if you don't understand and learn how to take full ownership and responsibility for your life and for your circumstances, and you're blaming everyone and you're constantly negative, that's a personality problem. That's a disorder. I'll go that far and say it like that. You need to check yourself.
Exactly. Because if you're having continued repeated experiences everywhere you go, and if you're asking, why does this keep happening to me? Why does this keep happening to me? That's the time to look inward and go, all right, what am I expecting? What beliefs am I bringing to this? What am I creating without realizing it unconsciously? Right. What am I participating in that I don't need to be? And that's what we mean when we talk about that willingness to grow inwardly. So it's powerful. It makes you more powerful. It's not to pick yourself up. It's to get your power back.
Yes.
And then there's two more good things. There's so much to say on all of these, you guys. So there's no way we're going to be able to really comprehensively get into each of these, because each of these could be a book in and of themselves.
Yeah.
The fifth thing is boundaries. You have to have good boundaries in order to have a healthy relationship that goes the distance. No matter how much love you have, if you don't have good boundaries. And in fact, boundaries strengthen your capacity to be more loving and to be more generous and to be more compassionate to your spouse when you have those really strong boundaries in place.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people think of boundaries as just saying no to people, or putting up walls and denying their spouse something if they put up a boundary. But it's actually the other way around. It's gaining mastery over your own self and knowing what you will let in and what you won't let in, and what you will participate in and what you won't participate in. And when you have that dialed in, you don't have to be angry at your spouse for asking for something that you can't give. You can just lovingly say, oh, I'm sorry, I can't do that right now. And there's no drama around it. It's so much easier when you have boundaries in place.
Yeah. I was going to say, there's the internal boundary for yourself, right?
Yeah.
Keeping a check on yourself. And then there's that external boundary of what am I going to tolerate? What am I not going to tolerate outside of myself? And the somatic texts talk about, when you're talking about trauma, overcoming trauma, it talks about, boundaries is you're having boundaries, internal and external boundaries are your best resource. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. They shore up all your resources. They allow you to be your best self. It's actually not even, it's that they allow you to be yourself. You can't, without clear boundaries, you're not even yourself.
Yeah.
Because boundaries are where you end and where someone else begins.
Yeah. And one of the biggest things too, that with myself, it's okay, what am I not willing to tolerate anymore from myself?
Yes, I'm so glad you said that, because that's what my work has been too. It's not so much about saying no and blocking, protecting myself from boundaries being violated on me. It's more how do I contain the things I might say or do that spill out and transgress someone else's boundaries?
Yeah.
Without even knowing it, because that's how I grew up. And so it's setting a boundary on yourself, saying, I won't accept that from myself anymore. Yeah. I like the way you put that. Yeah. The internal, external, or containing versus protective, depending on what you're reading, but that's an important distinction to make. I think a lot of people find that useful. So that would be something that you have to have and look into. If that's not something, if you struggle with that, you definitely have to look into that.
Yeah.
And then the sixth thing that you have to have in a successful, long-term, happy relationship is effective repair. Dr. John Gottman found in his research, and he says he studied a lot of things, but repair and the capacity to repair effectively, he calls that the secret weapon of happy couples. And essentially what that is, effective repair is anytime you take an action, or whether it's verbal or physical, to diffuse negativity or keep a conflict from escalating, or to patch it up after there's been some damage, if some feelings got hurt, coming back to fix that. That's repair. And effective repair can look very different for different couples. For some couples, it might be somebody cracks a joke and now the mood is lighthearted again. For some couples, it might be a really sincere apology. Whatever it is for you, you have to be able to truly repair. And what that means is that you don't carry it into the next thing.
Right.
And you don't build resentment around it. It's something that you let go and you move on. And then if something happens in the future, you treat that more like an isolated incident than a pattern. And,
Right.
and effective repair prevents resentment from building, like I mentioned. And we did a video on this recently. If you guys haven't seen that, check out the one under announcements in this group. If you go under announcements, there's one on resentment, which is really important too. Because if you do this right, though, if you do effective repair, you won't have to worry so much about resentment.
Yeah.
And it's more of a preventative. It prevents couples from getting to that place of being on the brink and in crisis.
Yes, totally.
So that's all I have. Do you guys have anything to add to that in terms of the 6 things you need in addition to love in a happy, healthy marriage?
I know that, so in terms of repair, right, and recovery, just to stack on what you said, it looks like, for instance, if you begin to go into an old story or an old dialogue and you see it coming on, you just don't respond in the same way that you have in the past. You disengage the pattern. And when you disengage the pattern, you move right into repair. You know what I'm saying? It's just, you're doing it in real time. You're moving into repair, and it just isn't a thing anymore. It just, and you do it enough times and you practice it enough times, it's not a thing. It's not.
Things that are such big issues that you can feel gridlocked around for years. With effective repair, you can actually get to the point where it's not a thing anymore.
A thing,
I like that. We should have that that could be its own topic sometime.
Yeah, right?
Being able to take that, something where you're really in gridlock, and it's hard to imagine when you're in that place, that painful place in a relationship. It's hard to imagine getting to another place where that's not a thing anymore. But that is completely possible.
Oh, yeah.
We see that all the time.
Oh, yeah.
So what to do? So what do we want to recommend for people that are listening, either live or when they listen to it later on?
Yeah.
How can people do this? I mean, the first step really is to be aware, as we always say, is to become aware of, all right, where do I need to strengthen myself in these areas that we've talked about?
Yeah. And notice, like, catch yourself. If you can see yourself or notice yourself in any of these scenarios that we've described today, own it, own it, and start getting educated. Get the help that you need, whether that's reaching out to us or whether that's reading a book, on childhood trauma. If you read something, you're going to understand it a lot better. You know what I'm saying? And there's so many ways to heal. There's not just one way. So I say, start educating yourself, reach out for help, and get the help that you need, get the healing that you need. It's crucial to your happiness, not only in your marriage, but in your life.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So, and most people can't do this alone, frankly. Some people can, some people can't. If you are somebody if you really love your spouse and you guys have been fighting for a while and you're just not able to break your patterns, and you want to know how the 6 things that we've talked about today can apply to your relationship, you are welcome to book a free call with us. It would be with one of us, and it's just a way to explore sort of what's happening in your relationship, where are the areas that are weakest, what's underneath it, and we can make some recommendations around what the next steps would be for you.
Yeah.
And whether it's, something we can help you with, which if we can help you, we'll let you know. If it's something we can't help you with, we'll let you know and point you in the right direction or connect you with who we think can help you.
Yeah.
Or get you the right resources. But really, the first step, I think, after you become self-aware, if you realize that you're not able to do it on your own, is to get the support. Because the biggest thing I hear from people that have been able to turn it around is like, I just wish I would have done it sooner.
Yeah.
Why did I wait so long?
Yeah. We actually got a live question, Monika, from Margot Riola. She says, my first year of marriage, and I find myself on the loop, as you said. I love and I need your work. Thank you. I need to check myself and work some things out for sure.
Awesome.
So, yeah, definitely, Margot. Yeah, schedule a free call, Margot, with one of us, and we'll hop on the phone with you.
I just realized actually that there's a way that let me know if this works.
Okay.
There's a way that I can put the link in for the session if you want to book this call. It's just monikahoyt.com/talk.
Yeah.
I hope it came up in the comments, but if not, I will add it.
It actually did.
Oh,
yeah.
Cool. That's so much easier than remembering to do it later. Okay, good. Yeah, feel free to book a call, Margot or anyone listening. And if you have questions about anything that we've talked about, please feel free to ask them in the comments below. We do go through those and we will answer them.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that's it for this week, you guys. Thanks for joining us. Thank you, Ned and Kelly. I always love talking about this stuff with you. And we'll be back next week.
All right, we'll see you then.
Bye.
See you later.